The Adelaide Thunderbirds are the first team to book a place in the 2013 final series as they take their winning streak to 9 wins on the trot, the longest in the club's history. The Melbourne Vixens keep their chance for the minor premiership alive, defeating the Queensland Firebirds, while the Magic and the Pulse live to fight another day in the ANZ Championship. As I say hello and welcome to Centre Pass, the official video podcast of the ANZ Championship. Dan Ryan here alongside former Australian skipper Ryan and Harby-Williams. And Kath, pole position still up for grabs, also a place in the top 2, that all-important double chance come the finals.
Yes, it is looming, Dan, but I'd suggest that the Thunderbirds, with the run that they've got home, they've got a bye, which I think is perfect timing. They've had to wait a long time for it, but they just need to freshen up and sort of regroup a little bit, despite the fact they're travelling well. The Vixens, I'm pretty sure that they're close to shoring up that second position as well. They beat the Firebirds the other day. The Firebirds showed some vulnerabilities, which they really need to clean up ahead of the final series. So it's taking shape. There are still some question marks, but that's my prediction for the top 2 anyway.
I like it, Catherine. Well, let's have a look now at all the results from round 11 of the competition. Sunday action saw a huge crowd at Allphones Arena with the Adelaide Thunderbirds getting over the line against the home side, the New South Wales Swifts, by 3 goals in what was a terrific contest. The Melbourne Vixens reversed the result from round 9, knocking off the Queensland Firebirds 53-47 in Brisbane to jump back up into the top 2. The Magic were 6-goal winners over the Southern Steel 58-52, keeping their title defence well and truly on track. And the Central Pulse were too good for the Tactics, 17-goal winners in Christchurch on Monday night. The Fever and the Mystics both having the bye. As we take a look at the competition ladder as it stands after 11 rounds, the Thunderbirds still in that number 1 position, the Vixens back up into 2nd, the Pulse, Catherine, sitting in that 5th spot, still a mathematical chance, but things look pretty tough for them to make it into the 4.
Yeah, I guess there's the one aspect that you look at, and that is percentage, Dan. So even if they do finish on the same points as, say, the Magic, percentage I think is going to count against them, and that's why I feel comfortable saying the Vixens will finish in 2nd position, because I think their percentage is enough to, if they're on the same points as the Firebirds, to get them over the line.
Okay, well, let's now turn our attention to round 12 of the competition. 4 games coming your way once again. The Central Pulse and the Adelaide Thunderbirds both having the byes. It's basically the top teams up against the bottom teams in this round, but a couple of danger games for the main contenders for this year's title. Starting with the Melbourne Vixens, they host on Saturday afternoon the New South Wales Swifts. The Swifts they haven't got the wins the past couple of weeks, apart from that one against the Mystics, but they're one of the informed teams in the competition at the moment. This is a tough one for the Vixens because the Swifts have nothing to lose.
Yes, I think there are, as you said, a couple of danger games, that one and the Fever versus the Firebirds, but the Swifts are showing the form that we had hoped that they would show during the course of the season, so I think an upset's looming. The only question for me is it's up against the best defensive unit in the competition, and they absolutely nailed it against the Firebirds last week. So do they have the goods in terms of Ware and Prattley and Jawaki or talent to match it with Mentor and Chatfield, who are absolutely on fire? They'll do a pretty good job, but I think they'll be too strong defensively, and that's where the win will come for the Vixens.
The last time they met was in round 8, and it was an 8-goal win to the Melbourne Vixens, but up to half-time it was basically a goal-for-goal game. Lisa Behag made a couple of changes to her lineup which didn't work, which basically cost them the game in that 3rd quarter. Those players didn't perform. Do you think she's learnt the lesson from that to now run a lineup for a full 60 and see what they can do against a quality side?
Yeah, I'd love to see the stats, because I'm not sure how many times they have run with that starting lineup for the entire duration of the match. And again, against the Thunderbirds last week, you know, it was pretty close at 3-quarter time, and then Behag brought talent on for Jawaki, and the Thunderbirds went on to win the game. Whether or not that was the reason, we don't know, but I'd like to see more of a settled lineup. They haven't travelled well, so if they're doing well and competing with the big guns, you put faith in those players who are out there and keep them on there. So I'd like to see a settled lineup, and you know, as you said, the Swifts have found form. They haven't won too many games this year, but they're certainly capable of beating the Vixens if all goes according to plan.
Speaking of the Melbourne Vixens, Maddie Brown, is there anyone in this competition that can beat her at the moment? She's in outstanding form and absolutely blitzing any opposition she comes up against. Yeah,
and I think there's no better accolade than you speak to opposition coaches. Most of them have 2 wing defence lined up, someone to go with her for the first half. They'll be exhausted by then, and find someone with some fresh legs to run with her for the second half. So she's one of the best players in the competition. She must be very close at the top of the ladder in terms of the MVP for this season. And she's one of the keys that the Vixens are doing so well. If you can shut her down, you obviously shut down that feed into the circle, and you go halfway to winning the game against the Vixens. But at the moment, she's unstoppable, absolutely on fire.
Should be a great game there. The Melbourne Vixens hosting the New South Wales Swifts on Saturday afternoon. Sunday afternoon netball will see the West Coast Fever hosting the 3rd place Queensland Firebirds. Another danger game for the Firebirds. They're fighting for their lives to get into the top 2 spot on the ladder. They're not assured, obviously, their chance to play in the finals just yet, but they've lost their last 2 games, so a slight form slump from the Queenslanders, a very crucial one, and tough to beat Perth at home.
And hence a test of character. If the Firebirds are going to do well during the final series, they've either got to learn from those 2 losses or they'll start reeling and there'll be an upset on our hands. So I think they struggled to get the ball into attack. Medhurst was quiet the other night. Aitken came in and out of the game, and that's what happened all over the court. There were moments when players did well, but a lot of the time they went missing. So they need all players to lift. I think they would have had a real heart-to-heart after that game, a couple of losses, and that's the reason I think they might just be too good for the Fever. But, you know, if Beckford Chambers and Brazel and Co stand up, then we've got a game on our hands.
They met in round 7 and it was a 9-goal win to the Firebirds. It was close for 3 quarters, but just a slight fall off for 5 minutes from the Fever was costly in the end. The Fever have a history of being the thorn in the side of the Firebirds come the business end of the season. They will be backing that past performances to know that they could knock them off under a pressure situation.
Yeah, and they'd like a big win before the end of the season. They've made some inroads this year, but they don't want to suffer a couple of losses towards the pointy end of the season. So they've got it in them, and we've always known the Fever have been that team where they'll knock off a big gun or 2 during the course of the season. Whether or not it'll be this weekend, I'm not sure, because I actually think the Firebirds have got too much experience to let go their finals chances, and they need a solid performance over in WA.
So that is the Fever hosting the Queensland Firebirds on Sunday. Turning our attention now to our games over in New Zealand, starting with the Southern Steel hosting the Canterbury Tactics in Dunedin. Basically the scenario for the Steel, they must win this game to keep the chances for finals alive. They're hanging on in contention for their top 4 spot, but they must win well too if it does come down to percentage.
Yeah, and they would have been disappointed in their game last week against the Magic. You know, they really ran with them for most part of the game, but then just lost their way for a period of time. So finals netball is what it's all about, and they're coming up against a team that's struggled all year. You know, they're competitive for 1 or 2 quarters, so the Tactics might stay with them, but, you know, they'll just keep bombing the ball into Fowler, and, you know, she's a 90% chance of taking all those balls, and hence they'll be too good.
So that is the Steel against the Tactics in Dunedin on Sunday, and the final game of the round on Monday night in Auckland is the Northern Mystics hosting the Waikato Bay of Plenty Magic, the defending champions. This is normally the big showdown of the 2 Kiwi sides, not to be in 2013, but again, it's a must-win game for the Magic, and there's still a mathematical chance to jump into as high as second if results fall their way, so they've still got plenty on the line to play for sure. Yeah,
well, they'll be looking at moving up the ladder, because it's all well and good now that they look like they may well finish in 4th position, but to win from 4th, you know, they won from 3rd last year, but at least they had 1 home final. To win from 4th, you have to play away and obviously win week in, week out. They're the danger team at the moment. If they can sneak into 3rd or, you know, let alone 2nd, they'll be a dangerous proposition, because all their players are finding form at the right time. You know, they've come and gone during the course of the season. Langman's been about the only consistent one, but it just seems like they're all finding form as we lead to the final series. So if they finish in 3rd or 2nd, you'd have to go a long way to wonder who's going to beat them, because they're finding form at the right time.
Certainly on track to get rid of that dreaded premiership curse too. We haven't seen that before. The defending champion make the finals in the following year, but the Magic on track to do that. Catherine, you had a great round tipping last week, 4 from 4. Well done. The first time I think you beat me since the opening round.
Thank you very much. That's a good
You deserve that. You needed to make a comeback. Take us through your tips for round 12, should I say?
Okay, well, I think we might be the same on this one, because I didn't find it difficult at all. But there might be some upsets looming, but we'll see. So Vixens, Firebirds too strong for the Fever, Steel over the Tactics, and Magic too strong for the Mystics. Ditto?
Good tipping, Harbs. I'm backing the exact same teams. The Vixens and the Swifts, that could go either way, but backing the Vixens at home. The Firebirds too good for the Fever, the Steel too good for the Tactics, and the Magic to get another win on the board. Well, that is all we have time for this week's episode of Centre Pass. Thank you very much for joining us. Catherine, thank you for all your insights. Make sure you check out the ANZ Championship website for all of the broadcast details for round 12 of the competition. Until next week, goodbye for now.